We would like to reach the hearts of the people. At 75, the indomitable maestro André Rieu shocked the world. Not with a breathtaking waltz, but with an instant so real, so human, that it left audiences into silence. For decades, he brought millions joy with his music, transforming concerts into parties of happiness, dance, and community. But what went on backstage shattered hearts, showing the vulnerable human being behind the legend. If you have ever swayed to his music or found solace at his concerts, this film will hit you harder than you can imagine. What actually happened to André Rieu at 75? Watch carefully and try not to weep. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. The March 2024 collapse in Mexico came in what was to be another radiant chapter in his decades-long career in music. André Rieu had backstage collapsed in Mexico City. At 74, the legendary King of the Waltz had always appeared unstoppable, his bow dominating audiences, his smile sparking joy, his presence larger than life. But that night, as the crowd applauded and the lights went down, the unthinkable occurred. The maestro, who had conducted, performed, and inspired millions of people around the globe, was brought to his knees by a sudden and ferocious combination of illness and overwork. Mexico City's high altitude had always been a challenge to performers, but for André it was too much. Added to jet lag and a nasty flu, the combined impact was devastating. Only after his second show on the tour did he start feeling extremely lightheaded and confused. A few moments later, he fainted backstage, causing shock waves among his entourage and the crowd present. The medical crisis was swift. Paramedics swarmed in, and his condition was thoroughly evaluated. The diagnosis was obvious: extreme fatigue, altitude sickness, and flu had knocked him out. What shocked fans and insiders, however, was not only the physical, but the psychological toll. Backstage, shaken and weak, André placed a call to his wife, Marjorie. His usually booming voice now cracked with vulnerability. Struggling through tears, he spoke words he had never spoken before: "I don't want a first concert day like this ever again." Those words weren't just about one night, they were about all he had suffered up until that time. André had been untouchable for decades, a musical legend who never failed. But in Mexico City, he revealed something else to the world: his humanity. The fall was more than a moment of physical frailty. It was a recognition that even legends have boundaries. And in the recognition, he demonstrated a rare type of strength. The consequences were immediate. The whole tour was cancelled, affecting over 40,000 fans. But something else shifted as well. His son Pierre, who had been working behind the scenes for a long time, came to the forefront decisively. He reorganized upcoming plans to put André's health first, restricting travel and concentrating on viable timetables. The era of consecutive worldwide tours was gone. What bitter tests did André face long before the lights dimmed in Mexico City? The reality is that the maestro's tale is not just one of successes on the podium, but also one of quiet storms fought behind closed doors: illness, loss, and the price of fame. Well before Mexico City, André had suffered through more than most could possibly have conceived. In 2010, he confronted one of the scariest health battles of his life when a viral illness invaded his inner ear, greatly compromising his sense of balance. For a man whose very presence depended on standing tall before orchestras and audiences, this was a horror. The illness made even walking agonizing. Performing was impossible. André was forced to call off a significant tour, a profoundly distressing move for someone who had always taken pride in never disappointing his fans. The anxiety that his body could betray him again never really dissipated. Then, in December 2016, something even more profound struck. During what was meant to be a joyful Christmas tour through the United Kingdom, tragedy hit when Ruud Merckx, a longtime trombonist and beloved member of the orchestra, died in his sleep while on tour in Leeds. He had performed alongside André for over 20 years, and his wife, also a violinist in the orchestra, was there when it happened. The loss was devastating. André cancelled the Nottingham performance straight away, and the anguish was so immense that he cancelled the whole tour, including such big cities as London, Birmingham, and Glasgow. He afterward said he felt as if he had lost a brother and that the orchestra, his second family, was devastated. The personal cost only grew when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020. In one night, all of the concerts were cancelled. The worldwide shutdown not only halted André's performances, but threatened the entire musical empire he had built. Tens of millions of euros were lost. Hundreds of staff members, from musicians to technicians to drivers, suddenly had a future that was uncertain. Instead of trimming expenses and laying people off, André came up with a shocking and deeply personal decision: he paid each staff member out of his own funds. For months, he absorbed the costs himself, refusing to let go of the individuals who had assisted him in creating his vision. Once, when threatened with bankruptcy, he even put his beloved Stradivarius violin up for sale. It was an extreme measure to preserve the wages of his employees. Although he never had to sell the instrument, the fact that he had considered it spoke volumes about how close he had been to losing everything. But how does a man learn to bear this massive weight with quiet strength? In order to comprehend André's resilience, we have to travel back to his early life and discover how he went from rejection to revolution. Born in post-war Maastricht in 1949, André came from a home full of music but lacking love. His father, an acclaimed conductor, dominated the household like a stern general. Discipline was practiced, affection withheld. No hugs, no praise, no warmth. The Rieu home, full of melodies as it was, did not have the very happiness music was created to bring. Under that cold atmosphere, young André was attracted to the violin, not through admonishment, but because it became his silent refuge. His mother expected perfection in schoolwork and practice on the violin, but no matter how well he did, there was never any praise. As a young boy, he discovered shelter not in humans, but in sound. The violin was more than a musical instrument. It was his voice when nobody would listen. The emotional scars of that home ran deep, and for many years they stayed there silently festering. It was only through therapy in adulthood that André started to understand their effect. He talked freely about his parents not loving him, not as an emotion but as a truth. During therapy sessions, he discovered the coldness he suffered was not his doing, and that recovery would not result from keeping his emotions hidden but from sharing them. That discovery was the pulse of his music. André's passion for waltzes and light classical music conflicted with his father's strict adherence to high art. When André told his father that he wanted to create happy, accessible music, his father brushed him aside with the slashing words, "I didn't teach you to play waltzes." It wasn't just rejection. It was rejection of André's very soul. But rather than giving up on his dream, André silently rebelled. In 1978, he established the Maastricht Salon Orchestra, a small start with a handful of musicians and local performances. Almost a decade after that, in 1987, he had the courage to think even larger. The Johann Strauss Orchestra came into existence with a mere dozen players and a vision of reviving classical music, to infuse it with laughter, applause, and bonding. Behind him stood Marjorie, his wife and muse. She handled money, scheduled performances, and even wrote anonymously. She never lost faith in him. When others mocked him, she laid the groundwork for his music to take flight. For André, music was not designed to scare or alienate. Music was designed to heal. His approach was straightforward: music was emotional, euphoric, and vibrant. And then came the surreal moment when one performance catapulted André into international stardom. On a spring evening in May 1995 during the UEFA Champions League final in Vienna, there was an unexpected revolution that occurred, orchestrated not by a football legend, but by a violinist clad in a tuxedo. The Ajax vs Bayern Munich game had millions of eyeballs fixed on television screens across Europe, but it wasn't for a goal or a foul that stole the limelight that evening. It was André Rieu, standing in the middle of a deafening football stadium, playing Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2 with his Johann Strauss Orchestra. To many, it was a mismatch, classical music at a football game. But in a matter of seconds, something magical occurred. The sea of over 50,000 spectators started swaying. Some clapped, others hummed along. What was to be a quick halftime break